taken quite some time for luxury car makers to jump on the EV bandwagon, but now we have options from the likes of Jaguar and Audi, and now from Mercedes with this, the lovely new EQC. It could be one of the nicest, poshest electric cars we've seen in some time. That's why I'm wearing this tweed jacket. This is what posh people wear? No? All right, never mind. I'm Rory Reid. Welcome to Fully Charged. Welcome to a review brought to you in collaboration with Auto Trader UK. Make sure you check me out on Auto Trader's YouTube channel for more reviews just like this one, which just so happens to be all about the EQC, Mercedes-Benz's first proper electric car, if you discount the short-lived electric B-Class. And in fact, they don't even say that it's an electric Merc. They say this is the Mercedes-Benz of electric cars. Bullish. Essentially, it's based on the GLC platform. It's an all-wheel drive crossover. It sits somewhere between the Tesla Model 3 and the Tesla Model X in terms of size. It costs £65,000, ouch. It has an 85 kilowatt hour battery pack with 80 kilowatts of usable storage space. Essentially, it's aimed at people who want to jump on the EV bandwagon with a premium badge without going for the obvious choice from Mr. Musk. Right, I feel like we should have a look at the design. The proportions are lovely. I think people who buy this car are generally going to be really pleased with their purchase. However, I can't help but think that Mercedes missed a trick with this car. Basically, this is designed from the outset to be a petrol and diesel powered car that they've then modified to become electric. So there are some legacy items that you find that might be slightly annoying to you. For example, why is there a bonnet on an electric car? Well, let's have a look under there and see what is lurking. Right, so underneath you've got this enormous plastic cover, and I'll just get rid of that and show you what's there. Basically, you've got yourself the electric motor. There are two motors, one at the front, one at the back, and that's all well and good, but I can't help but think that maybe Mercedes, if they'd given it more thought and designed this to be an EV from the outset, that they could have packaged this slightly better and maybe used this space more cleverly, maybe giving you maybe a frunk to store your luggage. But again, on the whole, they've done a decent job with this car from a looks perspective, so I'm gonna cut them some slack. Right, round the side, beautiful car. I particularly love these wheels. Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of aerodynamic wheels, but these are the best looking aero wheels I've seen on any electric car. I think they've done a phenomenal job with that. And on top of that, you have this little side step here, which comes in handy for things like families. If you've got small children, then that just helps it be more convenient for kids getting into the car, so little ones don't struggle too much. And then the rear door opens really wide to give you lots of room to get inside more easily. And they've done a really good job with this thing, actually. It feels really nice in here. What tends to happen with electric cars is that the batteries and the electric motors are quite an expensive part of the car, so they tend to run out of money to spend on the interior. But because Mercedes is a premium brand and its customers expect nice interiors and they charge more money for it, so they have a bit of cash left over, they've actually given that cash to their interior department guys, and they've spent it quite well, because in here it looks fantastic. We'll start with the doors because that's a perfect illustration of just how far they've gone. You've got so many different material types. You've got this faux leather material at the top, you've got some contrasting stitching, you've got some textured and patterned plastic material. You've got this stuff here, which feels a bit like a guitar for some reason. Then you've got ambient lighting all around the car, glossy black plastic in the center console, and the whole thing, I think, hangs together really well. Credit to Mercedes, they could have played it really safe and just given us the interior from the GLC, but they went the extra mile, and the perfect illustration of that are these vents finished in this quite lovely and quite bling copper material. They could have just given us the vents from the GLC, but you know, they went, no, we're going to design custom vents for this, the EQC, so that the customers who buy this car end up feeling more special. Nicely done. Once you're in, you'll find that there's actually quite a bit of leg room, a decent amount of headroom, not masses, but enough. And In electric cars, typically what they do is, because the batteries are positioned along the floor, your legs end up being quite high up, so you feel like your legs are behind your ears, but it's not bad in this car. Plus you have all the mod cons, like a couple of USB ports. Although I will say that as good as the front of this car is, when you're back here, you start to see where the money starts to run out. So a few of the materials become a little bit more scratchy and a bit less premium than you might expect. Okay, round the back, you've got a decent sized boot. The opening mechanism is actually really nice as well. You push that and up she comes. Fully electric tailgate. And inside you have a reasonable space, 500 litres. And although it's actually not the biggest in the game, I believe the Jaguar I-Pace is 575 litres, but this is still large enough for a couple of big suitcases. And underneath, there's a tiny bit of room for more storage. Not masses, but again, I think it's going to be suitable for most families. And if you decide to take a trip to IKEA to maybe buy yourself, whoa, it's trying to kill me. Okay, I don't like that, Mercedes. Jeez. We'll open it again. Right. If you decide to take a trip to IKEA and decide to buy yourself a wardrobe or a mattress, you'll find that there's actually a lot more space than you might expect. If I remove this parcel shelf, then if I decide to actually drop the rear seats, it's actually quite easy. I don't have to fumble around with any levers. I just pull a switch here, down it pops, pull another switch here, down it pops, and then you've got a massive flat loading area for huge objects. Really practical car when it's not trying to kill you. The other thing I want to point out is this quite unique infotainment system. Most cars tend to have a single screen located somewhere in the middle, and quite often that can take the form of just an iPad looking device that's been stuck on the dashboard, but they've thought about the design of their infotainment system and they've integrated it really nicely. It's essentially just a pair of 10-inch screens. One screen in front of you shows you your speed, your driving range, how much power you're asking from the battery, and the screen on the left is where your main menu lives. So you actually cycle through the menu system using this quite lovely mouse trackpad style thing on the center console, and as you swipe your finger, you get a little click to let you know that you've selected something new. And you can also feel a vibration through your finger. You get haptic feedback, which again is a really nice touch. But one of the coolest elements is definitely the sat nav. It does a couple of great things. First off, it shows you a little bubble around your current location to indicate how far you can drive. It's a really nice visual aid to help reassure you that you've got enough juice left in the tank. It also uses augmented reality to give you directions. So there's a camera mounted at the front of the car that scans the road ahead and then displays a visual feed on your screen to show you what's going on in front of you. And then it overlays graphics on top of that, so you can see the road names and arrows that show you exactly where you need to go. It's one of the best looking sat navs in any modern car today. And I'm not just showing you that because it looks cool. I'm actually using this to go somewhere very specific, somewhere that I think most electric car owners will end up visiting at some point in their lives. Yep, a charging point. Now, charging, quite an important issue to electric car owners, and Mercedes has done a lot of work to try and simplify that whole process. One of the big issues is that there are loads and loads of different charge companies, and if you want to use all of their services, then generally speaking you have to sign up to each one individually and then juggle a bunch of different contracts, and it can get quite frustrating. But Mercedes have something called Mercedes Me Charge, and what that does is it allows you to have one contract, one monthly fee, and that includes a whole host of different charging companies. All you have to do is pull up to one, plug in, and there's no complication whatsoever. So, specific charge options on this car include a normal Type 2 home charger, so you can plug in at home and charge up from 0 to 100% in around 11 hours. And the cool thing is, because this car has a range of 259 miles, if you have a commute that's less than 50 miles, you can drive this car from Monday to Friday and only have to recharge 1 day a week. If you want to go further afield, somewhere glamorous like this perhaps, then it also gives you the option to rapid charge using one of these. And this car can accept 110 kilowatts of charge. What that means is you can top up from 10% to 80% in around 40 minutes. At the moment, the typical fast charger that you'll find in the UK is limited to around 50 kilowatts, so you can expect to top up in around 70 minutes. But the good thing is that the EQC has a whole host of technology that can help you while away the minutes and hours. Let's check them out. Now, I tend to judge my premium electric cars on the number of gadgets and toys that they have, because quite frankly, you're probably going to be spending an awful lot of time sitting around at charging points like this, waiting to top up the battery. And the market leader when it comes to gadgets is definitely the likes of the Tesla, because it comes with things like Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, karaoke, and even console style games. How does the EQC compare? Well, not very well, but it does have a few toys. For example, you can customize this main screen in front of you. You can actually use these touch sensitive buttons on the steering wheel to actually cycle between a couple of different styles for your display. So you can go to Sport, that's Sport, Classic, that's Classic, and that's Progressive. So a few different styles for you to choose from. Not exactly going to occupy you for about 40 minutes to an hour, but you know, it's something to kill time. On top of that, you've got a reasonably interesting voice assistant which lets you do some interesting things like change the temperature or turn on the reading lights or even tell you jokes. Let's see if it does that. Hey Mercedes, tell me a joke.
How may I help you?
Tell me a joke.
Sorry, I'm too busy looking at the road.
Yeah, hilarious. There's also a power nap feature which helps you get a power nap somehow, and the training mode which lets you choose from a bunch of different exercise modes. So for example, there is a muscle stimulation setting. And I've done this before. What it does is it asks you to move your muscles in your body in various ways, in your back, in your shoulders, in your bum. You're not gonna end up with a six pack, let's not make that mistake, but it's a cool way to while away a couple of minutes. Today we are of course in Cheltenham, the heart of the Cotswolds, a town where SUVs like the EQC are extremely popular. So, what about its off-road capabilities? Now I know what you're thinking, that this is a little crossover with no off-roading ability whatsoever. Nah, I'm gonna prove you wrong. Let's go off-roading. Yep, that's road, that's technically off-road. Off-road confirmed. I want to talk to you now about the driving experience. It's good, on the whole very good, but there is good and bad. Let's focus on the positive elements first and foremost. You know what? This feels nice, it feels luxurious, it feels like you would expect a Mercedes to feel. The seats are nice and comfortable. I could sit here all day long. The steering wheel has a nice weight to it, and it just feels like you would expect a Mercedes to feel. The ride is also pretty good. It's quite a nice car in the way that it flows over the surface of the road. However, the problem is that this is a massively heavy vehicle, and that means that when you go through potholes, you really can feel those shudders come up through the vehicle. But even though it's massively heavy, the EQC is also massively quick. It uses two electric motors, one on the front and one on the back. The one on the front does most of the work most of the time, but when you ask the car to deliver a little bit more punch, shall we say, then it engages the rear motor, and that's when things seriously kick off. In total, this car delivers 400 horsepower or around 300 kilowatts, and that's good for 0 to 62 in 5.1 seconds, so it's quick enough to embarrass a Porsche. And if you're so inclined, or you want to finish your battery as quickly as possible, then this thing will carry on to a top speed of 111 miles an hour. Now, handling. I want to talk about handling. I know a lot of you don't care about handling, but I do. I love to drive for pleasure. So I want to let you know what I think about this car's abilities when it comes to driving through corners, or lack thereof, shall we say. This isn't a car that you're going to enjoy driving through a bend, particularly when you're driving enthusiastically. The issue is, because it's so quick, you can find yourself arriving at a corner maybe going quicker than you might expect. And whereas the ordinary GLC, or in fact many lighter cars, will glide around the bend with very little effort, because this thing weighs quite a lot and isn't designed to go around corners enthusiastically, what you find is that it develops quite a lot of what people in the industry call understeer, or in layman's terms, not wanting to go around the bend while staying in its lane. It kind of makes a beeline for the hedge in front of you and the field beyond. The brakes are good enough, but they're not what I would call amazing. They're strong enough to stop the car, that's no problem whatsoever, but the brake feel is a little bit on the weird side. The problem is the first inch or so of brake pedal travel essentially does nothing. All it does is activate the regenerative braking system. You have to push past that first inch in order to get to the real physical braking. And around town that can take quite a little bit of getting used to. One thing this car does really well, oddly, is drive slowly, and it's got a few tricks up its sleeve to help you do that in style. So there are several driving modes. There's a little switch on the center console that lets you cycle between individual, sports, comfort, eco, and max range. Probably my favorite mode of all, I've got to say, from an EV standpoint anyway, is maximum range. So you put it in max range mode, and this allows you to essentially just flop your foot onto the accelerator pedal with no regard to how much pressure you're applying. You just basically dump your foot there and the car takes care of the rest. It drives in the way that it feels is most appropriate for the conditions in order to maximize your range. And it's really clever because it uses the car's cameras and its sat nav to work out what your speed limit is. And if you just leave your foot on the pedal and you're in a 30 zone, it'll go 30 miles an hour. If you suddenly come into a 60 mile an hour zone, it will increase the speed up to around 60 miles an hour. And then if you drop down to a much slower zone, it will automatically drop down to that lower speed limit. On the whole, I think Mercedes have done a really good job with the EQC. It does so many things right. It's luxurious, it has a lot of gadgets, the range is great. It's a comfortable, nice, premium car that feels that level above most electric vehicles. I don't think it's perfect, not by any stretch of the imagination. First and foremost, the agility through corners. It just doesn't handle as well as I would like it to. And secondly, I'd like to see what they could do if they were to package it more efficiently. If they had a clean slate and they were able to draw this up from the ground as a pure electric vehicle and one that's not based on a legacy petrol vehicle. But on the whole, I've got to say, they've done a good job. This is a pretty good first attempt at an EV, so well done, Mercedes. So that's my 2 cents on the EQC. Many thanks to our Patreon supporters, without whom we could not make these episodes. I look forward to seeing you soon on Fully Charged, or if you're interested, over on Auto Trader UK. So, as always, if you have been watching, thank you.